here we are on the weekend when I am anticipating that France will win the World Cup. By the time most people listen to this podcast, I will either be celebrating or in tears.
Is it possible for them not to win? What would have to happen for them not to win?
Croatia would have to upset.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about injury. Are we talking about? I mean, is it really possible for Croatia?
Here's the thing: Croatia has surprised everyone, and they shouldn't have. But here's the thing: the story with Croatia, and we'll get to movies in a minute, so that I can get this out of my system. I've got a very, very good friend in Sweden who's Croatian and is just out of her mind with joy over this. It's the smallest country to make a World Cup final since 1930.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
I mean,
smaller than Uruguay?
Yeah.
I guess it is.
Well, Uruguay in 1930 was when they made it. So,
that is when they made it. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it is. It's the smallest country since Uruguay to make it. As an independent country, they got third place in 1998, their very, very first year in the tournament as an independent country. The Balkans have always fed a lot of really, really class players into the European leagues. You got a lot from Serbia and from Croatia and Macedonia. That's always been a really very strong area for a certain kind of player. And but they've never been the Cristiano Ronaldos.
No.
They've never been the Lionel Messis, right? They've never been those superstars. They're the other guys, the role players, the ones that just kind of hold it down in the midfield and make you look good. And suddenly they put 11 of those guys together on a team who all play for elite European teams. And we've never paid attention to these guys individually, but they have always been there making other people look good.
Yeah.
And now they just make each other look good.
Yeah.
and 1998, that was a super strong team, and they've just been quietly sort of making inroads. But I think they've played 3 overtime games in a row.
Yeah.
No one's ever done that and won it all. France is just so talented, and they have such a great midfield,
And that kid, what's that little bouncy
Mbappe,
jeez,
19 years old.
Never seen anybody move that fast.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the
kid is,
because the thing is, he moves fast. He moves his body fast around the field, but then his body moves fast. His feet move fast.
Everything.
So even when he's standing still, he's still moving faster than everyone there.
He is. I'm going to say it right now. So many people have been called, the new Pele, this, that, and the other thing. And there have been lots of superstars, man. I mean, Maradona, as much as I hate him, I know he had some skills. Look, Messi and Ronaldo and Neymar and all the other Brazilians, Romario and Bebeto and. You've had Germany had Klose and France had Zidane and Germany had Beckenbauer and Müller. And I mean, there are tons of these guys. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time since Pele that I have looked at somebody and I've thought that kid could transform the game in the same way as Pele.
Yeah.
He's not a Brazilian. He doesn't play that super skilled, on the ball thing. But he's so blazing fast.
That's the thing. He's faster than Pele.
Oh, he's as fast as any player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He is as fast as anybody. And he guns it like lightning.
Yeah.
He's just, once he's off to the races, he's off.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Fastest he can possibly be and kicks hard.
He's 19.
Yeah, I know.
So much poise and going to his first final. It's unbelievable.
I have sneakers almost 3 times as old as him.
He was not yet born when France won the World Cup in '98.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy to me.
Makes me. All right.
Anyway, all right. So Mbappe, he's my boy. Love that kid. I feel like Sunday's going to be really, really something special. Anyway, also, on the CineGods page, please go if you are a member of the DigiGods group. Please go over to CineGods and like it so that you also get a lot of stuff cross post between the two. We're going to get the cinegods.com page tweaked pretty soon. That's going to start rolling again. We put a few things up now and again. Mark's going to be putting up some reviews soon from France, and Mark may be going to Deauville and covering some stuff from Deauville for us. So that'll be fun. And Mark is in France right now, by the way, so he'll be there if and when they win the World Cup and have a good old time. And I also posted to the CineGods page, and I think I put it on the DigiGods page as well, that Criterion later this year will be releasing in honor of Ingmar Bergman's 100th anniversary birthday year. They're releasing a 39-film boxed set.
Oh, wow.
Basically everything Bergman ever did. which is unbelievable, just phenomenal. So I'm enormously elated about that. I'm thinking we may want to dedicate just a whole show just talk about Bergman.
We could.
Yeah.
Bring Peter. We should invite Peter.
We should, shouldn't we?
Who is our film week colleague?
Yeah.
Who is, a deep expert.
Yeah, for
Bergman.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That would be a really fun thing to do. So anyway, I'm going to start off. I'm going to hit off some cult stuff really quickly. We got an interesting collection of cult movies, which we try to cover as often as we can. The Nikatsu Erotic Films collection from Impulse keeps putting out bizarre stuff, and it's good bizarre. Now, just so that everybody understands, Japan has a very Japsploitation films and that's not a word that a lot of people are fond of, but that's what it's called.
That's what they named it.
They called them Japsploitation films. So if you have a problem with that word, take it up with the people that created it, not me.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are a handful of countries that created a lot of exploitation films in the 1960s that all kind of interconnect with each other. In the U.S., in Australia, in Japan, predominantly, and then certainly in Italy to a slightly lesser degree. Some also in Spain, Jess Franco. There are a lot of places around the world at the time that were making these kinds of things. A few of them in France. And in Japan, because the laws are so rigid about what you can and can't show in terms of erotica at this time, it's not like in Sweden where it was just, hey, there we go. No, you couldn't do that in Japan. It's very, very, very conservative. So they found ways of getting around it that actually make it filthier than if they showed everything. So somehow,
when you put that little fuzzy box there.
It just, anyway,
yeah.
It really is, it's kind of fascinating. And that carries into subsequent eras as well. So what we have here are from the 80s, which tends to be even more restrictive in many respects. One is Nun Story, Frustration in Black. Now, we don't have video on this show. Tim, I'm going to ask you to describe the picture on the box.
Well, it could be a nun if she had the entire outfit on.
Yeah, but she
rather than just the habit. And she is wearing just the habit, so it's not a nun.
Yeah, she's got the head deal and panties, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm saying that's not a nun.
No, not really.
Yeah.
So honestly, it's about it. It's like any of those nunsploitation movies.
Well, look, convents and prisons.
Yeah,
that's where you want to. In America, we put them in prisons. Over there, they put them in convents.
Italy made a few of these as well, but anyway, this is deeply, deeply offensive on a modern level. In the Me Too era, you're not going to want to watch this. This has some violent stuff in it that is very, very disturbing.
Yeah.
But as an artifact of this particular kind of film in Japan, it's interesting. White Rose Campus gets into the schoolgirl thing, which has always been very very much a part of the Japanese fetish culture, and this one is really, really cruel. This is almost more like a roughie from the 1960s in the U.S. You have these like a gang of cross-dressing torture rapists who hijack a bus where these girls are going on a field trip, and the ugly girls kind of get the worst of it, or the ones that they call ugly. It's really it's very, very exploitive, as you would expect an exploitation film. And it pushes the envelope more than I would have expected Japanese movies of this genre to do. So anyway, White Rose Campus and Nun Story, Frustration in Black, those are the two, strictly for people who are who understand this genre and have an interest in it.
Yeah.
A Taste of Phobia is an anthology of basically kind of exploitation horror films. This is from Artsploitation Films. And it's a total of 14 altogether. All of them deal with different fears, different phobias. Specific, like there's Kayetophobia, which is a fear of hairs. I've never heard of that.
Me either.
But I can understand it.
Yeah.
I've seen some. Like when I go running, every once in a while there'll be a dude with some back hair. It makes me want to gag. It's almost like wings. So yeah, I can get fear Kayetophobia. Then there's like henophobia. Do you know what henophobia is?
I can't even begin.
Henophobia is a fear of young virgin girls.
Well, that's a ludicrous phobia. That's just insane.
Anyway,
even young virgin girls are not afraid of young virgin girls.
Yeah, here's my favorite one. Are you ready for this? And I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. Magiricophobia. Magiricophobia. No. It's fear of cooking.
That's just crap. That's bullshit. That's just a lazy dude. That's nothing wrong with that person.
Anyway, so there's all these little films that deal with all these bizarre fears. Some are better than others. Some are just downright hilarious. They know they're yanking your chain, but it's all in good fun, and it's not bad. So you might want to check that out. That's from Artsploitation. That's on a DVD. That is A Taste of Phobia, and films from all over the world. This is one I did not particularly like. I don't think this is particularly good. This is also from Artsploitation. But it's not really my thing, and it's basically because it's German exploitation, and being half German, I just know the mentality too much, and it's a little bit too Kafka-esque, but and a little too gory. Nonetheless, people will love that. If you like, giallo films, you'll get all into this as well. It's called German Angst. And this is from 3 directors who specialize in these really nasty German horror films. And 3 separate films called Final Girl, Make a Wish, and Alrauna. It's nasty. It's gross. It's very much kind of in the Saw vein. Like Final Girl is by Jörg Buttgereit is really. I just didn't need this, and I don't need this in my head. It's all S&M and torture porn, and it's really nasty. But some of you people out there, you're sick and you get off on this stuff, so have at it. Spiderlings, Arachne in the UK is a trauma release that could be funnier. But for what it is, it's still it's trauma, and it's still in the mix, and they kind of shoot these things out as fast as they can, and sometimes it's hit and miss. This one is about a couple of lesbians and some punks, and it's all about this bizarre nightclub, and there are people out there trying to kill people, and somehow this all hangs together, and it has spiders in it. It doesn't really work. It's just trying to be wild and weird and woolly in that Lloyd Kaufman way, and it sort of does, but it's not their best. From Mondo Macabro, this is actually really, really, really cool. This is real vintage stuff. This is Who Can Kill a Child by Narciso Ibanez Serrador, with whom I am not familiar. But this is classic 70s horror, Euro style, Euro horror from Spain, 1976. Which has it overlaps a little bit with Italy at that time. The exploitation stuff in each country is they have their own sensibilities, but they're kind of sort of similar because a lot of people in each industry worked in the other. This one is very, very uniquely Spanish. It has a certain Spanish flair to it. Focuses on a couple of English tourists who are visiting the island of Almanzora, which is just off of the south of the Spanish coast. And when they get there, it's kind of like the Star Trek episode Miri. It's all kids.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Right? It's very creepy. It's like Children of the Corn, or what's the old black and white one? The Village of the Damned.
Oh, Village of the Damned. Yeah,
it's got that
white
kind of
hair.
Yeah, it's got that kind of vibe to it. And except these kids are just like they grin too much. It's like those creepy smiles, right? It's like very Joker-like. The man who laughed in silent cinema. Anyway, it's this film was really, really creepy. It's more of a creep factor all the way through, but it's really quite good. Who Can Kill a Child? And it's quite good. It's a good artifact of the period. And then the last one is from the Something Weird and the AGFA library. AGFA is the acronym that stands for the what does it stand for now? It's the American Genre Film Archives. That's what it is. AGFA, American Genre Film Archives, not the film stock. But this is the God Monster of Indian Flats, and this is also on Blu-ray. And this is also really great 1970s era schlock made by a director named Frederick C. Hobbs in 1973. Never heard of Hobbs, but it's pretty great. It really kind of splits the difference between blaxploitation, 70s monster movies, and a little bit of that Ray Harryhausen kind of stuff.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe even a touch of Godzilla as well. It kind of sits in between all that stuff. It's actually a lot of fun. So and Frederick C. Hobbs apparently was a serious guy. It's the whole thing. It's a sheep monster. I don't even want to tell you any more about the monster. It's quite funny, and it's a very clever film. So has some special features on here. This is made from a 4K scan of the only surviving 35mm print. And it has some vintage trailers on it as well, and even some extra shorts from the Something Weird vaults. But the monster itself is an absolute stone cold riot. You're going to love it. The God Monster of Indian Flats, 1973, Frederick C. Hobbs.
And that would
on
be digital
Blu-ray.
today. But they actually built stuff back then.
They did. So funny.
Can I knock off a few of these?
Yeah, by all means.
Some gay and lesbian cinema. These three are from Breaking Glass Pictures. Interesting stuff. Play the Devil, directed by Maria Govan. This one and Hooked, directed by Max Emerson, have a little bit in common. So the first one, Play the Devil, very interesting film. It's set in Trinidad and Tobago, and this is one of these older man meets younger younger boy about to become a man sort of movies. He sees this young man in the play. Young man is very, very good in the play. He's just a business guy. And he sort of takes up with this kid. And yes, there's an attraction, but he's really trying to help this kid because he can see a talent in him, and he's showing him how to shape his life in such a way that he can be successful. And just as this kid is sort of moving along and their relationship is developing, the kid's drug-addicted father shows up. So it's one of those, and here is this young guy between these two grown men. One of them his actual father, the other one a sort of potential lover. It's a dynamic that's ripe for all kinds of drama, as you might consider. And Maria handles it really beautifully. It's paced very nicely and just lovely to look at. It's set in Trinidad and Tobago. Use all kinds of sort of traditional ceremonies and things like that are shot. It's just a beautiful little movie. Play the Devil. Check it out if you get a chance. The other one is Hooked. Kind of the same thing. An older man who's married and still in the closet has a young friend who he's been running around with for a while, and they're very good friends, and they do all kinds of stuff together. But that young guy, like young guys sometimes do, kind of gets out of control a little bit. So the older guy, decides to try to figure out a way to save him from himself. So he takes him from New York to Miami, but that's not the best idea in that particular situation. Nevertheless, it's another one of those movies about the relationship that's beyond just the notion of sex. It's about people actually trying to help each other because they can see him going down a road that he already went down, and it was a mess back when he did it. The other one from Breaking Glass, Male Shorts International Volume 1. So this is really great. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 short films, each one of them different, all of them really beautiful. Just past noon on Tuesday, two friends go to the penthouse of a third friend who has passed away. They didn't know each other, but they both knew him very well. And they find out a lot about themselves and him and everything else as they go through the penthouse of their passed away friend. It's a very touching little movie there. The Mousetrap. This is an interesting one too. This is about a gay man who cannot stop dreaming about this ridiculously beautiful woman.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's just over. He's dreaming about being with her and having, but he's like,
that phobia anthology. One of those phobias is a fear of dreams.
The fear of dreams.
That would be perfect.
It's really an interesting sort of dynamic right there. There's one called The Storm, one called PD, and another one called Neptune. They're all perfectly lovely little films. So if you're into this subject matter, this is some neat stuff to explore because it comes at it from a slightly different direction from usual. And then from TLA releasing, we've got Grimsey, which is really a neat film. So this is about a guy named Berto who breaks up with his boyfriend. Boyfriend goes off to Iceland. He decides to go off to Iceland to try to find his boyfriend. This is really mostly a travelogue. He meets another guy, of course, who's going to take him all around Iceland to help him find his boyfriend. But he just sort of falls in love with that guy and falls in love with Iceland and forgets about his boyfriend. Which, of course, is exactly what's supposed to happen. It's kind of neat. And this one here, Alberto, this is a lovely film for a whole lot of different reasons. For one thing, it's set in 1975 in Portugal. Just after the revolution. Young man comes home from Portugal after he's been away for several years in Brussels. The revolution in Portugal was one of those revolutions where the people, the state, took property, mostly from rich, well-to-do families, and you know. So he goes back to his home, which has been taken by the state. His old family home, his big old family home. All kinds of people are living in his old family home, and he decides that he's going to live in his old family home anyway. And it's all about the people in the house. He meets a guy. It's a lovely, lovely movie. 1975. Post-revolutionary Portugal. This is just such a beautiful movie, and that's the thing that I really liked about it the most. It's just an extraordinary film to watch. So anyway, from some gay and lesbian and queer cinema, neat stuff. That's from TLA Alberto.
Quick run through on some of the TV that we've got this week. Disney's Gravity Falls, the complete series, is now out in a Blu-ray collector's edition, all 40 episodes. If you ever saw this show, this is actually a really, really fun show. It skews certainly into a little bit into the Simpsons, American Dad,
all that Seth, what's his name?
Yeah, the Seth MacFarlane. You know, it's a little bit in that. Basically, about a couple of kids, these twins who go to the who kind of fish out of water in this with this crazy uncle of theirs in the town of Gravity Falls in Oregon. And it's a little bit like an animated version of, I don't know, maybe Wait Till Your Father Gets Home combined with Northern Exposure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
But anyway, it's a really cute show. It's very funny. It's got a great edge to it, but not too much of an edge. Adults and kids can enjoy it all together. And it is out in a really terrific Blu-ray set. Looks gorgeous, nice slipcover. And it has audio commentaries on every single episode, and they're terrific. I only listened to a few of them. But they're great. They're really, really great. You get some really terrific insight into the animation and the writing process and how the characters developed. It's really, really good, especially if you're interested in animation. It's very, very insightful and very, very educational. And then there's a look back featurette and some other kind of behind the scenes stuff and deleted scenes and promos, and it's great. It's really, really terrific. And then from Kino Lorber, we have the first season of Modus, which is something they clearly snatched off the market from, which otherwise would have been snatched up by MHZ, because MHZ gets all this Scandinavian detective stuff, but they didn't get Modus. So this is a Swedish detective show about a psychologist who used to be an FBI profiler, and she is. This is the great thing, because you can't just be a great detective anymore. You got to be a detective with baggage. So either you've got some personal issue, like you're obsessive compulsive, or you've got you're an alcoholic, or whatever the case is. In this case, very interesting. She has an autistic daughter, and that creates all kinds of really interesting family stuff. And in addition to having to sort of deal with her daughter's issues, now there seems to be like maybe a serial killer who's on the loose in Stockholm, and so we now get into Girl with the Dragon Tattoo kind of stuff. It gets very moody in that way. It's really well done, really well directed, and beautifully photographed. And as this evolves, it becomes really fascinating psychologically and procedurally. So
I love all
of
the really wonderful sort of Swedish, Danish, Belgian
so
television that we get now. That you and I are old enough to remember when we didn't get any of that.
No.
If we got foreign television, it was British television.
Yep.
Occasionally some Australian television.
Yep.
But the years and years and years worth of stuff that we don't get. We get it now, and I'll tell you, it's worth reading the subtitles.
Oh, it's so worth it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it on Netflix too.
Yeah.
Honestly, they have a lot of foreign stuff on Netflix. So Modus season 1 on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber is absolutely terrific. Season 2 of The Good Place with Ted Danson and Kristen Bell. A show that
I reluctantly must admit that I find very.
Do you find it funny?
Just I started watching that show and it was just so dumb.
The first season I thought was kind of treading water a little bit to sort of try to ease you into the concept, because it's a bit of an odd concept,
But it's Ted Danson.
It's Ted, and Ted Danson's hilarious.
He's just hilarious.
He's always hilarious. But he's still playing his Cheers character.
He's playing Sam Malone.
He's still
He's been
Sam
playing
Malone.
Sam Malone for 45 years.
Yeah. But anyway, and then Michael Schur was the one who kind of got behind this, who did Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Parks and Rec and has done a lot of other great television. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of sort of a post-mortal comedy is cute, is funny. I think the second season is getting closer to where I kind of want it to be, but it's still not there for me yet. Yeah. Ted Danson's there. Kristen Bell is there, but the rest of the show, the rest of the cast, the concept, I kind of feel like I want it to get a little more.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like what's actually going on here? Yeah.
And then the last one here is.
I think it would be great if they turned out to be in an alien spaceship. Not dead at all.
6 DVDs, 24 episodes of Rowan Martin's Laugh In, the complete fifth season, season 5. And lots of great guests on this thing. Really fun, just a great flashback. Great, it just immerses you completely in the era, the zeitgeist of the 60s and 70s at that moment in time. Really, really terrific. The guests on this season are phenomenal. I mean, yeah, you get the people you would expect. Hugh Hefner and Bob Hope and Gene Hackman and Carol O'Connor. They all show up. But then there are people that you don't expect. Tiny Tim.
Yeah.
Joe Namath. Sugar Ray Robinson. Liza Minnelli. Rita Hayworth.
Oh, yeah.
Charo. Pretty great. So, I mean, it's just, it's really, if you live through this era in any way, even at the beginning, at the end, it's just great to see all these people showing up again. It really, really
The great thing about that show is
so much fun.
It was a topical show. It spoke to the issues of the day. The issues of the day included, a relatively controversial president during most of the run of that show.
Very much so, yeah.
A war during most of the run of that show.
That's true.
I mean, so that then and now, not so much different, not so terribly different.
Yeah.
Want to knock off some new movies?
Yeah, let's knock off a few of the new movies. Let's dive into that.
I'll go with this big movie, Amy Schumer's movie, I Feel Pretty,
which I liked.
And it was a strange thing because I was a big fan of Shallow Hal. Remember Shallow Hal?
Sure.
Gwyneth Paltrow, which is thematically kind of a person
similar.
who doesn't,
you're right.
A sort of thing on there. I like Shallow Hal better. Than this. This one was
the Farrelly brothers did.
The Farrelly brothers, right? Yeah. And but this is good. It's in the neighborhood. Shallow Hal was a little bit more sophisticated about it, but this is funny.
In Shallow Hal, they put Gwyneth Paltrow in a giant fat suit.
Exactly. Yeah. And they made who was the guy who kept falling in love with her? Jack Black.
Yeah.
He was the one who was engaged in the delusion.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being a self. So she always knew what she looked like and wondered what was going on with him. So when you make here, she's the one who has a delusion about what she looks like, and therefore she is able to behave like the woman whom she thinks she is.
Which is the fun part of Amy Schumer's performance is that she doesn't change. We all know Amy Schumer, but once she gets bonked on the head, and basically just so everybody knows, she's a kind of a low level, work in the basement, works on the website for this large fashion empire. And she just wants to be the receptionist in the main office. That's all she wants, which are usually the really hot-looking people. And she gets a chance to apply for the job. And it's a pay cut, but she get to be around the glamour and all this stuff. And, of course, it's Michelle Williams, who is the daughter of the
guy that runs
Michelle Williams is the one who, well, I'm not going to get too much away. That's the friendship that sort of drives this, is that Michelle Williams is the daughter, the heir to this thing, who has she uses this really high-pitched voice that's just so squeaky. It's so funny. It's so hilarious.
All of that is so funny in this movie. And the gags are funny as hell, too.
Yeah. The gags are really good. So anyway, she gets bonked on the head and looks at herself in the mirror and thinks that she suddenly has become like the crazy, most hot, sexy thing in the world. And because she owns it, everybody else buys into it. And that's the message that I really like, which is how you see yourself is likely how others will see you.
It's an interesting thing. There were some women that had an issue with this film, right? The issue being that when everything sort of straightens itself out and she can actually see herself in all of this, that her mood changes, her attitude, and they had like, wait a minute, what's the message there? I look in the mirror and I see me and I look like I actually look, and I'm not happy anymore.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about this anymore because I have a penis.
Yeah,
and I just don't know what the right thing. All I know is I thought it was funny.
It's not a perfect film. It's formulaic in certain very obvious ways, but I think it's a great message, and it's executed well. And
I did not realize that it had landed on that spot.
Yeah.
But some women pointed out to me that it had landed on that spot. And I'm like, I completely missed it.
Well,
I thought that this movie was really a female empowerment movie. So, but I don't know. Anyway, bonus features include deleted scenes and a gag reel, and other stuff like that. But it's interesting debate, if you ask me. Where do you land?
And Michelle Williams in that voice just slay me.
Yeah,
absolutely slay me.
that pitch point. Dwayne Johnson just had a movie to come out where he played a guy with one leg, where he jumps around skyscrapers. Yeah. After he had that previous movie with the earthquake.
Yeah.
And in between the two, he was in Rampage with a giant silverback gorilla.
Yeah.
Where he jumped around buildings, blah blah blah. And look, I'm not gonna rag on Dwayne Johnson. He's made the same movie 3 times in a row.
Well, more than that.
Yeah, at least. Sometimes with a leg, sometimes without a leg, sometimes with the gorilla, sometimes without. This one has the gorilla in it. This was a lot of fun, I'll say also. Yeah. Rampage is a lot of fun. There is not an original moment in the whole damn film.
Dwayne Johnson has 2 movies that he makes now. And he's learned, let's remember, he's learned from Schwarzenegger. Very wisely.
Yes.
He makes the big action movies, the True Lies, the Terminator, whatever it is, where he is, he is the man and the muscle, and he's saving the world. And then he's making the comedies, the buddy comedies, where you
Twins.
Like Schwarzenegger would do Twins in Kindergarten Cop, and he does things like Baywatch and
Jumanji,
and Central Intelligence.
Yeah,
where very more often than not he's making fun of his own image, and those two kind of feed each other. And it's very smart. There's a reason why he is the biggest star in the world now.
Yeah,
he is the highest paid star in the world.
Yeah, him and Kevin Johnson's right close behind him, which I think is really, really funny.
Yeah.
It's interesting because for a while there he arced toward that dramatic thing.
Yeah.
Like Vin Diesel did. Walking Tall.
Yeah.
I mean, he was still the man, but there was a lot of dramatic stuff going on. He said the hell with all of that.
Oh yeah, and the one where he's coaching the kids in the camp. Where he's
Yeah. So he's you know what? I'm only gonna have these muscles for so long. Let's get some money.
Yeah.
And anyway, Rampage, pretty neat. All kinds of stuff on that one too.
Yeah, that's 4K. It's a good looking 4K, but all the stuff with CGI these days is just great on 4K. Good deal.
Carves itself right out. The Leisure Seeker, Helen Mirren and Donald Sutherland on Sony Classics. Look, this was it's a sweet movie, but it's one of those geezer films.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it's an old couple for one last fling, and they go out in the Winnebago, and their
he's
kids
a little
are chasing
goofy and
them,
doesn't quite really know what's going on, and she's trying to keep him on track. And you just know that one of these geezers is not going to make it out of this movie alive.
Yeah.
And you don't know which one, but you just know. Nevertheless, they are good performances. It is kind of funny. Helen Mirren is still on my list. She's still on my list. Special features in conversation with Helen Mirren and Donald Sutherland, the making of The Leisure Seekers. So it's nice on Sony Classics DVD. You got one over there?
Yeah, I was gonna give my big shout out for Isle of Dogs, the new Wes Anderson film, which for a minute when this came out, I thought, oh, that's gonna be that's a shoo-in for at least an Oscar nomination for animated film, may even win it. I think The Incredibles 2 is probably gonna take it now.
Yeah.
I just don't see anything else take it. It's just too much fun. But Isle of Dogs is great, and I did not like The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I know Mark loved. I forget how you felt about it.
It's okay.
Yeah. See,
it's Ryan Woody, but nothing like that.
Well, no, this is a smart film.
That's
this is a really smart
really,
film.
really sharp and funny film.
The idea behind it, the plot is the most impossible thing to explain. There's a crooked mayor, and then he's got the kid who's like who's supposed to be his heir apparent, whatnot, and then all the dogs that live on the island after Hiroshima. And somehow all this fits together in a way that I can't even explain the plot.
Yeah.
But it's a kid and dogs on an island full of garbage.
Yeah, but it is a parable.
It is a parable because there are different tribes of dogs, right?
And they are very rare. It works in the same way that the original Godzilla kind of worked, and what it was talking about, while it appeared to be a a movie about a big old giant monster stepping on
Yeah.
things in Tokyo. It was not a movie just about a monster stepping on things in Tokyo. It was about all kinds of
And
other
this-
things that had to do with, and a little bit of that's going on in
And
this
this
movie.
is kind of a genre film too. I mean, it is not literally in the here and now. It takes place. It's kind of an alternate reality, kind of an alternate post-nuclear reality, and there's some weird retro technology going on. But it's a really sharp movie. It's a beautiful Blu-ray, very nicely packaged. Comes with Movies Anywhere digital code on it, so you can add that to your Movies Anywhere library. And I just think it's a really smart film, and I hope people remember it at awards time.
And I've got Crystal here, which is a film directed by and starring William H. Macy. And it was kind of a neat little movie that I rather enjoyed when this popped out. One of those sort of like all-star cast kind of things, too. Anyway, his character meets this beautiful woman called Crystal, played by Rosario Dawson, who's an ex-addict with a 16-year-old son. And he pretends to be an AA to try to woo her, and that's a really sort of old school plot kind of thing. You know what I mean? I mean that's almost like a screwball comedy kind of plot. But when you get the right people, which include Kathy Baker and Nick Robinson and Tip and T.I. The hip hop star T.I. Harris is his name. He is becoming quite the little actor. These hip hop guys, who we know,
they all are.
There's a skill in that translates
it beautifully in ways that it never used to translate for other recording industry stars.
Yeah, I mean, make Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., but it's certainly not hip hop guys, but it does.
But it almost to a one. Every single hip hop star who has tried to transition into movies has succeeded at doing it, almost without
LL
question.
Cool J, Ludacris,
all of them.
even the ones that blew it up later.
Snoop was great in the Starsky and Hutch playing Huggy. You kidding me? He's fantastic. Eminem in 8 Mile played himself, but still he's great.
Yep. 50 Cent and Get Rich or Die Trying. You can get really these guys can.
You know what? I mean, it's
Queen Latifah. Let's not leave the women out.
Oh, for crying out loud! Will Smith.
Are
we kidding? I mean, come on. That's how Will started.
We could go on with that for a while. So that's on DVD. Not a lot of special features. William H. Macy directs that film. We could have talked about this one when we were talking about the gay films. Funny, there are two kinds of gay films. There are gay films with gay people in them, and then there are gay films in which there are actually no gay people. This is one of those. Disobedience, Rachel Weisz and Rachel McAdams, Alessandro Nivola, in this neat little movie about a Hasidic woman, a Jewish woman, and another woman who had gone away from the community, who comes back to the community from which she has been exiled, and she gets involved with a young woman there, and they fall in love, and so it's a movie about a rather obvious sort of subject. It's been done before, but these two actresses, Rachel McAdams and Rachel Weisz, are very, very good. This movie takes a very particular attitude toward the sort of idea of what goes on in these Hasidic communities, and it's not the nicest attitude, I would say, but it's the point of view that the film has decided to take. So, yeah, I mean, you can see it right in the title, Disobedience. Interesting thing. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. This is the Blu-ray and digital, but not a whole lot on here. Wade?
Nope, not much.
Not much, yeah.
The last two new movies. One is a thing from Screen Media. This is straight to DVD, but it's worth checking out if you're a big action fan, especially if you're a fan of the whole kind of stunt WWE, mixed martial arts, whatever it is. If you kind of like movies that put those people in, you will enjoy probably On the Ropes. On the Ropes it's kind of a thin plot. It's a couple of brothers who inherit a crime empire from their dad, and thus ensues all of the usual crime empire machinations and battle for power, and it's very Shakespearean and yet not very Shakespearean at the same time. Really, it's an excuse just to put a lot of really talented fighters and stunt people into one movie who are all represented by apparently the same management company, which I think was a producer on this. So It's kind of a smart thing.
Yeah.
It's action packed, and these people, they're great stunt people,
and they all have fans.
They all have fans.
Yeah,
and these are hardcore stunt people who've done some really, really big movies, and it's a good solid straight to video action.
It's not
film.
like you got to be able to act all that well when you're just playing some sort of a Guido,
Yeah, On the Ropes is the movie, and then we have Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. Now, Blumhouse, of course, is Jason Blum's production company that is so famous for having rejuvenated the genre of the low budget horror film in really extraordinary ways. Anyway, Truth or Dare. This is the unrated director's cut. Doesn't make much difference. Still same movie. This also comes with a Movies Anywhere code and a few behind the scenes things, and not much by way of extras. But the story is kind of typical of low budget horror. You got a bunch of kids who get together in a single remote location, and which is usually like an alleyway or an abandoned building or something like that, and it's the same thing here. And then some otherworldly presence, some supernatural presence intervenes, and things go completely off the rails. Usually these kids are playing with a Ouija board, or they're playing a record backwards, or whatever it is, something or they open up a...
Saying Candyman 3 times in the mirror.
Yeah, there you go. It's that stuff. And then, next thing you know, something comes from beyond, from the other side, or there's a mirror or some artifact, or they something from a pyramid, whatever. It's always something. In this case, they're playing the game Truth or Dare, and suddenly if you tell a lie or if you don't take the dare, something will punish you.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's well done.
Sometimes I forget that new generations of film goers come along that are 10 and 12 and 20 and all of that, and for them, they come to those genre films for the first time.
Yep.
And stylistic considerations notwithstanding, they're dipping into their sort of giallo-esque, whatever, this, that, or the other thing, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is just all so terrible.
Yeah.
It's just awful and terrible, but I had a moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So I let them have their moment.
All right, we're going to hit some docs here right now. This is a sensational documentary. Everybody should see this. From Kino Lorber is the Udo Kier narrated documentary, Hitler's Hollywood. This is a sensational documentary by the German filmmaker Rudiger Suchsland, who previously made the film From Caligari to Hitler, which touches on a lot of the same stuff. This is like a complementary film to that, which is, it gets into, as a German filmmaker, he obviously knows the history of the movies, and especially as the history of the movies pertain to Nazism in the 1930s and 40s on both sides of the Atlantic, and he is continuing that study. Udo Kier, of course, does one of the great all-time voices. Did I ever tell you my Udo Kier story?
I was with you when your Udo Kier story happened. On that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you there that day?
Was I there that day? Because we were shooting down at Lacey Street.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I might have been outside with that Jamaican cat smoking weed. Your sound guy, the sound guy?
That's right. The sound guy with the dreads.
Yes,
oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that guy.
He and I were outside. You should tell the story.
All right. Well, anyway, I'll get to that in just a moment. Anyway, what this is Hitler's Hollywood looks at the films of the Third Reich and it asks, what does this say about the Germany of the time? What does it say about its values, its industry, its people, the people who chose to work in the industry, the people who chose not to work in that industry, who may have felt like they had to work in the industry? All that stuff is...
I love the way that film sort of reveals these people who took the places of the people who did leave. So all the names that we know who immigrated either to England or all the way to Hollywood, they were replaced one for one.
Yes, they were.
With hand-chosen folks who were, still sort of significant figures.
One of whom happens to have been Stanley Kubrick's father-in-law.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Kubrick's wife, her uncle. Sorry, his uncle-in-law. So it was her uncle who made Jew Seuss.
Oh.
But it's fascinating to hear her explain it, how naive he was, thinking that he would be able to use the system to tell his stories. Well, the system used him.
Yeah.
It was the naivete of someone thinking that they could somehow find a place in a totalitarian regime. And it's really a tragic story. So it's Stanley Kubrick's wife's uncle who made that, which is a fascinating history. But in any case, Hitler's Hollywood, great documentary. And then kind of on the same vein, We have a trio of great docs from MVD, music video distributors, to some of you, and EPF Media. EPF Media released these 3 documentaries, and they're all great. The Boxer of Auschwitz, which is the story of Victor Perez, and it'll absolutely blow your mind. Victor Perez was the youngest world champion in the history of boxing, and he wound up being deported to Auschwitz. And it's a story I had never heard of, and it's remarkable. It's just another one of those remarkable World War II stories you just can't ever imagine. And then there is Ascent of Evil, the story of Mein Kampf. This is also from EPF Media, which is all about the manifesto, the book, the famous sort of Bible of Nazism that Hitler wrote when he was in prison in the 1920s. And it's a book that is, obviously for all kinds of reasons, really hard to find today. People don't want you reading it. Let me tell you something. Read it. The book is its own worst enemy. The more you mythologize it and mystify it, and the more inaccessible it is, the stronger you make it.
Mein Kampf was a mandatory reading for me when I was in high school.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it was it was controversial that it was.
Daylight, just like a vampire.
But
Daylight will roast
because,
that thing like nothing.
Because it became controversial, and I don't know why I'm going off into this, but there was a Catholic church, and it was the Anti-Defamation League that came to the defense of the school district. I went to school in St. Louis City Schools.
Yeah.
The Anti-Defamation League came to the defense of the school district and said, no, make sure they read the book.
Because if the only people reading it are people who are inclined to agree with it, and if they read it in secret in an echo chamber and just reinforce themselves, there's no one in the culture to rebut it, to argue against it, to ridicule it.
Directly by understanding it and being able to quote it too.
That's it. So that's the importance of that. And then the last one here is Dogs of Democracy, which is beautiful. This is also from MVD Visual and from EPF Media. And this is about the stray dogs in Athens, which apparently is it's a huge thing. This is, they're all over the place. It's like it's a problem, but it's also kind of an iconic thing about the city of Athens. And this is all about how they are, the pros and the cons of it, and how difficult it is to deal with the stray dog problem in Athens, but also how it kind of represents something in the Greek social conscience.
Like the cats, those cats that are all over. It's what's the city in Pakistan where the cats?
Similar, similar deal. Yeah, similar deal.
I'll knock off a couple here real quick. PBS documentaries, because I happen to have seen both of these, and I was a particular fan of the Jazz Ambassadors doc, The Untold Story of America's Coolest Weapon in the Cold War. I always loved that tagline. America's coolest weapon in the Cold War. Jazz Ambassadors, this is amazing. So, at the sort of height of the Cold War, we called upon the most American thing that existed, and very likely still the most American art form, jazz. Our great jazz musicians to travel the world as ambassadors. And so Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie and Duke Ellington and a whole group of other musicians, noted musicians, black and white and Latino, mixed race bands, traveled all over the world exporting the notion of America. They were doing this, of course, while Jim Crow was still being practiced in the segregated South. And this movie sort of compares and contrasts and looks at that dynamic, that dichotomy between what these wonderful black musicians were going around the world saying about America in places like Egypt, which is particularly interesting now in talking about freedom, while there were places where they could not sleep all over the United States of America. A very, very striking film this is. Not to mention the black and white photography and the stills and the performances. Just some of this stuff never before seen.
Yep.
So you have that going for it as well as the actual theme from PBS. Another PBS doc, Going to War. Look, it's strange that me, an old veteran, with a bullet in my left leg right now, don't like war movies. generally speaking, I'm not a fan of war movies. There are war movies that I like.
Yeah.
I'm a Thin Red Line guy.
Yeah.
Thin Red
Sure,
Saving Private Ryan.
sure.
That whole thing. And certainly, I like war movies that have a sort of anti-war,
Sure.
pacifist sort of dynamic to them,
Yep.
despite the fact of the war. What I do love about this PBS series is that this is what this is.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this looks like. This is what it sounds like and feels like, and most importantly, this is who we're sending to do this now.
Yeah.
And it don't look like the folks we used to send to do this in the 40s.
No.
Or even the 50s for that matter.
Right.
These people are coming from two very particular stratas of society. The lower class, those people who just don't have the money to do anything else, and the sons of our upper middle class society who go off to West Point and the Air Force Academy like I did and all that kind of stuff. And then that big gigantic middle is not represented in this movie.
No.
In these movies at all. You have these dedicated young bright officers, and then homies from the hood and homeboys from the ranch or the farm or whatever, good old goobers. And I'm like, man, this is the military was not that way when I went into the military.
Yeah.
There were all kinds of middle class people who were in the military. Yeah. Anyway, PBS going to war. That's what I like about this movie. It shows you who were actually sending this documentary, who were actually sending off to these wars. This one is not from PBS. This one is The Chinese Lives of Uli Sigg. This is a really interesting film. This is more or less about the fellow who helped China change from the economic system that it had under Mao, and it was starting to change a little bit under Mao, but it certainly started to change after Mao. That sort of tried to combine communism with Western-style economics, economic policy, and he helped manage to pull that off. He's also one of the great collectors of Chinese art, most of what is going to be going to the Hong Kong Museum. So it's a really, really interesting figure here, the kind of person who has an impact on something in the world that is probably one of the most impactful things of the last, 100 years, the economic transformation of China. So that title, when you and I were kids, Wade, when it said made in China, it literally meant junk.
Yes.
Trinkets and crap, made in China. It was funny if you had something made in China. That's not true anymore.
It was not circuit boards.
No.
And appliances and everything else.
Most of which has been designed by Americans. Yeah. Actually. But this guy is one of the reasons why that's not true anymore, which is an interesting thing to me.
I got another one here. I should have included with the other. This is the other Kino Lorber. This fell out of my my filing system here. So this is the other Kino Lorber movie about Nazi era movies. And this was originally released by Zeitgeist, now part of the Kino Lorber library. Forbidden Films: The Hidden Legacy of Nazi Film. This is by Felix Muller, also a German filmmaker, who, as pertaining to what we were just talking about, Felix Muller previously made a film about Stanley Kubrick's wife's uncle called Harlan, In the Shadow of Ju Seuss, which is all about that film and about him as a filmmaker. This is a great complement to the other one because there's a little bit of overlap here. But Forbidden Films, The Hidden Legacy of Nazi Film, is very specifically not about all the stuff, not about the entire movement at the time, but is very specifically about the 36 give or take, movies from the propaganda faction of all those movies, the blatant propaganda that are considered so incendiary and so inflammatory they just want to keep them locked up, much like Mein Kampf. So they're afraid that these movies might get out and do what they did all over again, which is nonsense. And that's kind of the thrust of the movie. This goes and it has a great discussion about them. And where they can screen them in schools in Germany, for example, they have to really contextualize them, and it's really it's a fascinating look at and dissection of propaganda at its most raw, but sometimes at its most obvious and even amateurish.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting movie.
That word propaganda, which we insinuate with a negative meaning now.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it never had.
No, not previously.
Almost everything is propaganda to one extent or another.
True.
And certainly, the United States of America made propaganda films. We just talked about the Jazz Ambassadors.
Tons.
Those are propaganda films.
Yeah.
But there's a context in which we talk about them. Now, there are propaganda films that are full of.
When you win.
Yeah. There you go. I don't even have to finish it. Yeah. A Skin So Soft. Look, this is an interesting film. also about these bodybuilders. I think like these 6 guys.
So Mark and I, let me just preface this.
Yeah.
Mark and I did an audio commentary for one of his previous films.
Oh, Denny. How do you say his last name? Cote.
So we did an audio commentary for one of his previous films, and it's worth pointing out he's a very, very slow French Canadian documentarian, sometimes narrative filmmaker, sometimes a little bit of each, where you can't really tell what's going on. Denis Cote just basically sets the camera up and he lets life transpire in front of it.
Yeah.
And that's what A Skin So Soft is.
And the thing of it is you look at it, you think about a film like Pumping Iron, Schwarzenegger from 70, whatever it was, and that film was about pumping iron, you know, relatively speaking, these guys and what they did in these competitions.
This is about everything else.
This is about you watch them do all that,
yeah.
But this movie is not about that.
No.
This movie is inside these humans' existences.
And
the why of it all.
And I am still left, even as interesting as it is, I am still left with the why of it all, because you watch it and it's such a mundane, grueling routine of eating food that's disgusting and dull and tasteless, and just working out and doing other things and, you know, checking whatever. It just seems so. To what point?
It becomes, to me, it became a thing that's about the kind of human being that requires this sort of regimen. Because you know these guys are like they're soldiers or whatever they were. Regimen, and the regimen becomes what they are doing to their bodies. And the reason they're doing all these competitions, but that's not really what's going on. The competitions, they need these regimens, and I don't know. It's very interesting. Skin So Soft.
Genetically Modified Children is from
those are my favorite kind of children.
It's from Cinema Libre, and it is Cinema Libre makes progressive activist cinema.
Yeah,
is the best way of putting it. And the question that is being asked here, which appears to be answered, even though this is not a film that seeks out the other side, does not seek to necessarily portray anything balanced. So you could argue that this is propaganda, but it makes a very persuasive case that Monsanto exerts so much pressure on poor Latin American countries and farmers to hit certain quotas and to deliver the goods, that they have to use very aggressive herbicides and other chemicals, which it appears wind up altering, not just creating birth defects and things like that, but altering the genetic code of the children in the area, which is a horrifying thing. It's like these are Frankenstein children at a certain point.
Because they're coming into direct contact with this stuff. It's not about eating the food.
No.
This is about them coming into contact.
It's about
with this stuff,
playing in the fields and touching it and having it just become part of your lifestyle. It's a rather terrifying case that they make, and it's well worth watching. Genetically Modified Children.
Wow.
And then we also have 6 films by Nicholas Geierhalter. This is from Icarus Films and the Kim Stim Library. Nicholas Geierhalter is a very, very famous but not widely known documentarian who is basically known for, I don't want to put him in the Frederick Wiseman mold because he's not quite, but it's a very stark photographic style that sort of defines him. He's very how would I say, austere and geometric in the way that he shoots his movies. And essentially his movies are slice of life movies, but they look at oftentimes controversial subjects and try to find an aesthetic. Oh, how would I put it? I guess the best way is to say that he tries to find order and beauty in things that may not necessarily suggest order and beauty, and that creates a really interesting aesthetic contrast a lot of times. So these are 6 of his films. And Chernobyl is the subject of one of these films, and something similar to what we just talked about with Genetically Modified Children, issues with food production is subject to another one, Our Daily Bread, which was very, very, very famous. There's also Abendland, which I had never seen before, which is beautiful to look at, and then Elsewhere. I mean, these are good films. So again, very stark. Not everybody's cup of tea as far as documentaries are concerned, but if you want to see beautifully, beautifully made films, definitely check this out. 6 films by Nicholas Geierhalter.
Deep insight into those particular issues there. Our Blood is Wine, a film by Emily Railsback. I love this movie. So she goes out with this very famous sommelier, Jeremy Quinn, and to the Republic of Georgia. There is a deep, deep, deep wine-making culture. It goes back 8,000 years in the Republic of Georgia, but it was almost completely lost during the Soviet period and ensuing wars right up through the 90s. But there were a few people, a few rural farmers and vintners who held on to some of these ancient sort of ideas about how to do this. And she goes and she finds these people. And it's really, really just absolutely extraordinary. There are people that have vines that go back several centuries. Little cuttings and clippings, which is like a big thing. So, we don't often think about wine from the Republic of Georgia or Georgian wine, but it's a deep culture.
A lot of, not all wine has to come from
either
from France and Northern
Bordeaux
California
or Northern. Yeah, that's it. So so it's one of those kind of things. So it's a very, very beautiful film. Also beautiful because it's shot in the rural areas of Georgia.
Which are beautiful,
gorgeous, and lovely people too. Our Blood is Wine.
Israeli filmmaker Amos Gitai, who is he was the first major Israeli filmmaker to get international attention. He has made a sequel documentary to his 1982 film Field Diary, which was, I believe, if not the first, it was one of the first films to deal with the documentaries to deal with the Palestinian and Israeli crisis. And he's made a follow-up to that called West of the Jordan River. And they really work together as films. If you've never seen Field Diary, you need to. It's a really superb film. And he went back now, here we are, 30-some years, 36 years later, and revisited the situation. And what he finds, you would think is going to be, depressing and no hope and just a horrible, horrible thing. And there is some of that in the edges. But what he finds are people on both sides, Jews and Palestinians, Israelis and Palestinians, I should say, who are making the best of a bad situation and who are finding ways of solving it as best as they can, just in spite of the political situation. And it's encouraging, and it is hopeful, and it does say, eventually the people will do what the politicians can't or won't.
Yeah. Extraordinary stuff. This is a very interesting documentary as well. Acorn and the Firestone. Acorn, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. My mother was a member of Acorn 40 years ago. 40 years ago, and in the ensuing period, Acorn was involved in all kinds of things: voter registration, community organizing, advocacy for low-rent housing, for people with low incomes and moderate incomes. They did all kinds of things that were, not necessarily urban, also often in rural communities as well. And we're sort of tangentially connected to birth control services or recommending people, all this kind of stuff. Well, back in 2009, some Acorn representatives were secretly recorded by conservative activists, I think that's fair to say, Hannah Giles and James O'Keefe.
And that
whole thing. And they had this footage, and there, it's like this fake prostitute and pimp and all this kind of stuff. And
honestly, I remember seeing that video, and I remember thinking, how could anyone, there's nothing about him that is a pimp.
No, he was so non-pimpish.
This is a middle-class white guy that went and he watched Superfly.
And he put on that hat.
And he put on that hat and that outfit, which is now 50 years out of date, but he's a white guy who doesn't look like a pimp.
No,
like white pimps have a certain look.
Yeah,
like they usually look like heroin addicts.
They don't look like Ron O'Neal from 1972.
No, they don't. And how he could walk into an office and actually pull that off,
which is why I think that the Acorn knucklehead fell for it, because I thought this is just me talking now. I think he was thinking to himself, this guy cannot possibly be a pimp because he's dressed like a pimp. Nevertheless, all of that went down, and it really shook apart this organization. It all got published on and whatever that Breitbart site was back at the time.
Sure.
Anyway, this film sort of looks at that entire situation. All of the documentation of the situation, the recordings and everything was made, and just sort of lays out what happened. And I think that is a wonderful thing. Very often these things pop up in the news, particularly nowadays, where allegations of fake news, this, that, and the other thing. And we see the story, we see the 5-minute piece on it, maybe 3 or 4 times over the course of the run of the news item, and then it sort of drifts away. And when all of the details about it come to bear, we never really gather them all together, and we're left thinking the thing that we knew the last time we heard the story. And I love it when filmmakers go out and they gather everything that we know about it together, even if there's not some decisions to be made about it, and they make a movie that explains it all, that allows us all to get on the same page, at least with the facts of the event, even if we don't end up in the same page in what we think it means. And that's what they've done here, and good work for them. Acorn and the Firestorm.
All right, we're gonna move on to classic movies here, and I'm gonna jump first with a bunch of Arrow titles. We've got one from Arrow Academy, a foreign language film, and then we've got a couple from regular Arrow, which are terrific. As a cult film, Doom Asylum has such a great history. Doom Asylum is hilarious. Now it's gory, but it's gory in an '80s way, from the '80s slasher thing. So this comes in right around, sort of on the heels of Friday the 13th and the Halloween films and all that, late 80s, about 87 or so. And as we're talking about before, movie about kids. Kids got to go find a place. Well, they're not playing a game. They're just looking for a place to party. Hey, man, that old abandoned asylum, there's no one hanging out. Let's just go and just party at the old asylum. Yeah, man, let's party at the old asylum where that crazy guy, driven mad years earlier, is just waiting for a bunch of dumb kids to party so he can start picking them off one by one in a really grisly way.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
And usually it's punishment for having sex.
Exactly. That's all it is. It's a moral parable. So anyway, that's all this is. This is just one of those movies. But of all of those imitative movies, Doom Asylum is really one of the all-time classics. It's hilarious. Comes with so many extras, you can't believe it. It's like Criterion level extras, especially a new commentary with the screenwriter and a new audio commentary with The Hysteria Continues. That's a name, The Hysteria Continues, which I didn't listen to. But a lot of other stuff here is really, really good. And then The Case of the Scorpion's Tail is a very interesting Italian film from 1971, which is it's technically part of the giallo genre, but there's more going on to it. Sergio Martino, who directed the film and is known as kind of a third-tier giallo director, made like Torso and other stuff. This is extremely violent, but it's a really smart script. And it's smarter than you normally get with kind of exploitation films. So it's worth checking out. It all deals with this. It's kind of like a thrillery Hitchcockian story where there's a woman who's trying to collect on the life insurance policy. I don't want to give all this stuff away. Where her husband has apparently died in this plane crash, and the procedural events that follow are really, really interesting and very smart. And if you strip away all the giallo stuff, what you're left with is still a really smart movie.
Yeah.
So it's really worth checking out. That's called The Case of the Scorpion's Tail by Sergio Martino. Also comes with tons and tons of extras. Really, really great stuff. Terrific new transfer. And some interesting featurette documentary material on the history of giallo films in particular is really good.
Shall I jump over to a few of these?
Yeah, hit those.
Because these are Criterion.
Oh, hold on. I had the one more. Sorry, I forgot the last of the Arrow Academy title. Woman is the Future of Man, along with Tale of Cinema. This is a double feature by Korean director Hong Sang-soo. And Hong Sang-soo is kind of getting to be a little bit more known here. He's kind of like the Korean Ozu in some respects. It's all very finely observed socio-cultural stuff. And these are really interesting films I had never seen before. Woman is the Future of Man is about a couple of guys who had an affair with the same woman, and who take that fact to a very disturbing level. I won't tell you what goes there. And then Tale of Cinema is a very interesting kind of. It reminds me a little bit of Day for Night, the Truffaut film. It's an interesting movie about making movies, especially from a Korean standpoint. And the lead performance by Lee Ki-woo, who plays this guy who well, I want to say it's like. Well, I won't tell you anything else. It's a very, very. It takes a very interesting turn, and it's really kind of it's so interesting. Really, really good performances. So it's a movie within a movie. I'll tell you nothing else about it, but you really got to see it. Tale of Cinema and Woman is the Future of Man. 2 films by Hong Sang-soo. It's really good, from Arrow Academy.
Let's see. I do have a few of the extraordinary Criterion Collection films here, including Bull Durham, 1988, Ron Shelton's film. Ron Shelton, of course, known
So great.
for those sort of sports-oriented films, even when they're not good, say like Cobb or whatever, they're still good. But he never quite equal. You know, there's Tin Cup. Love me some Tin Cup. I think it's Ron, and White Boys Can't Jump, which is that's it's funny. I watched that the other day. It doesn't work. No, they're both too short. But Rosie looks great in the movie. And then, of course, Bull Durham, 1988. Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, Tim Robbins, young Tim Robbins did the. There was a release. I don't know what it was. Something, and I did like an interview with Ron, and specifically talked about this movie. As it happens, this Criterion Collection release is approved by the director. Blu-ray special edition is approved by Ron.
Yeah.
So they did one of those things with it. It's packed full, as all Criterion collections. Hey, so this is the story of a baseball player, Kevin Costner, a catcher, probably looking at the twilight of his career while he's watching young Tim Robbins come into the into this rookie league team, probably looking at going to the big show sometime soon. They both have this relationship with Susan Sarandon. Now, this is what I wonder, though, about this 1988 film. Would this film work today in our... now, she is a woman of agency in this film. You know what?
It would still work, but people wouldn't want to admit it.
They wouldn't want to admit it. Because I watched this film. I love it.
Yeah.
But she's a woman of age. She's having an affair with the young boy and the older guy. Yeah. Both of them. They're her boy, but they're her boy toys.
Yes.
And it's not about. So I don't know. I think it would. So Bull Durham, 1988. An interesting question. Can you still watch that movie today? Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Man, another one, right?
I think this was the last time that a debut filmmaker, a debut feature filmmaker, won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah,
they can't even get in the competition anymore.
Steven Soderbergh. Although this film didn't win, if I'm not mistaken, Chameleon Street won that year.
No, Sex, Lies, and Videotape won Best
No,
Picture.
what am I thinking? Sundance.
You're thinking Sundance.
Yeah, that's what they won. And this
Sex, Lies, Videotape won Cannes. It won the top prize. It was a big deal.
Yeah, and it was quite an amazing thing. 1989, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Steven Soderbergh sort of starting. I mean, he had been directing music videos before that, but nevertheless, feature film. Again, Criterion Collection, absolutely packed full. This restored 4K digital transfer, audio commentary from Soderbergh. And Neil LaBute. Neil LaBute. When's the last time we saw a Neil LaBute film?
Oh, he's just been doing plays and stuff.
That's right, because that was always his thing anyway. Chris went to school with him.
Yeah.
And new introduction here by Soderbergh. Look, this is just really, really an extraordinary film. Again, of the sort that I'm not sure you can make today. Or I put it this way: there's nothing controversial in this film, but I'm not sure it would get made today because there's nothing controversial in this film, and maybe that's the reason why. Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Criterion Collection, and Dragon Inn.
Oh, I love my Dragon Inn.
King Hugh, 1967.
This is the King man was just the best. King Who was the John Ford of martial arts films.
Touch of Zen, Legend of the Mountain, All of Kings.
This is so good. Yeah, Dragon Inn, which was remade as Dragon Gate Inn in the 90s, but this is maybe my favorite King Who film. It really is so beautiful. It's just the color. It's just fantastic. It's an absolutely beautiful movie.
Basically, it's about a king that exiles a family, and there are 2 children left. He kills the family, 2 children left, and he sends these Black Arrow sort of assassins after the children.
It's a classic action film thing. You know, the good guys are holed up, and the bad guys are closing in on them, kind of Alamo style, and they've got to unleash hell.
Yeah,
it's great stuff. And let me hit a few Kino titles here, and then we will close the show out. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer that's been told so many different times. The one that most people know is the Johnny Whitaker version. You may not know that in 1938, Norman Taurog, famous in later years for directing a lot of Jerry Lewis stuff and other great comedies, Norman Taurog made a version of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer for David O. Selznick, which is quite good. Which one is better? I don't know. It depends on what you like. But come on, it's Taurog and it's Selznick, and it's really, really, really great. Now, this was reissued in the 50s in a really badly cut version. I prefer the original 91-minute version, but they include them both on this, and that's fine.
Great.
They did an HD restoration of this, and Tommy Kelly is a terrific Tom Sawyer. He's different from Johnny Whitaker, but no less impressive, and it's a wonderful, wonderful telling of the tale by any measure.
Interestingly, slightly more sensitive than the later version.
Much more sensitive.
Yeah.
Much more
some
sensitive.
Of the sort of racial dynamics. And whatnot going on,
Oh yeah. Billy Wilder's Irma la Douce with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine reteaming after The Apartment. Irma la Douce was a Broadway thing, and it's done in Broadway style. It's very, Irma is a hooker. Let's be honest. This is all about turn of the century Parisian prostitution and making it look fun and sweet and glamorous and everything else. This has 2 audio commentaries on it. One with our former LAFCA colleague Joseph McBride, who was also in our documentary Schlock, and the other one with film historian Kat Ellinger. Both are really, really good. Joe is just he's a scholar and a gentleman. And Jack Lemmon is basically, he's a John. I mean, I don't know how to tell you. Irma's a hooker.
Half of Billy Wilder's films couldn't get made today.
No, they couldn't.
The Apartment couldn't get made today.
True.
All those executives with that girl and that guy.
Oh my gosh!
Get the hell out of here! You can't do that.
John Barrymore and Katharine Hepburn in A Bill of Divorcement. This is an early pre-code George Cukor movie, also for Selznick from 1932. Great melodrama. This is Katharine Hepburn's first film from 1932, and the idea is that John Barrymore, they were a couple, and he went to a mental asylum, lost his mind, and years later he's broken out. He's got his mind back, as if that ever happens. But now she's going to marry somebody else. It's the old, you had him and then you lost him scenario.
They made it a bunch of times. It's
good melodrama. It's really good, solid melodrama.
Is that the one with the Trumbo script? The Dalton Trumbo?
No.
That's not. That's a different one.
This was scripted by it's based on the play by Clemence Dane.
Yeah, I think the one they did in 1940 was Trumbo.
Yeah. And then I Walk Alone is a great old noir.
Yes.
With Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. Byron Haskin directed this for Paramount. They did a sensational new 4K scan of this, transferred it to Blu-ray. It is so beautiful. Troy Howarth does the audio commentary. Basically, a couple of crooks. They have to split up to get away from the cops. One of them winds up in prison. The other one does well. When the dude in prison comes out years later, he wants his half of the loot. It's great stuff. We've seen that story. We've seen that story so many times, but how great is it? Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas are both so hard-boiled, man.
Yeah.
They're so hard-boiled. You just don't get any better than that.
And the blondes.
Oh, my
are just
gosh,
ridiculous.
the blondes.
Kristen Miller, yeah.
And then The Maids with Glenda Jackson and Susanna York. This is, again, part of the American Film Theater collection that we've been talking about that's now coming out steadily on Blu-ray again. Back when Ely Landau decided to do all of his to take all these plays and transfer them into movies and make a sophisticated corpus of play adaptations of great stage plays. Anyway, this is a terrific film. One of the better American Film Theater films, but it's important to point out that this story's been told a lot. I can think of 3 films in the past 20 years, one of them French, one of them English, one of them American, that told this exact story. Now, if you don't know, this is a story of 2 sisters who went to, it's a true story, 2 sisters who went to work in the home of a Parisian socialite, and things just went kind of weird, and the sisters wound up in this very bizarre, twisted, incestuous lesbian relationship and ended up murdering the woman they worked for.
Oh, yeah.
So,
after abusing her greatly.
It's a really creepy story. It really happened. It's one of the most famous murder stories in the history of France, and it's just eerie and creepy and bizarre. And Jean Genet wrote the original play of this story, which they decided to adapt into a movie here with Glenda Jackson and Susanna York, both of whom are terrific in it, but this is by no means the best or the definitive telling of the story. It's just one of many. But again, it's part of the American Film Theater corpus, and that it continues to be a very important collection of movies that were all made in the 1970s, and it's worth a look. But again, remember, this story's been told a lot. And the best thing about it, basically, for me, is that it was shot by Douglas Slocum, the legendary British lenser, who, of course, is most famous to us for having done Raiders of the Lost Ark. And who died at like 98 years old. So that's it. We will see you guys next week.